Hey everyone, this is Johnny here. Just wanted to make a video talking about a trend that I've been seeing within the e-Catholic right. And that trend is agnosticism. Um, I really am starting to believe that a lot of these people that claim to be Christians and claim to be trying to instate some sort of theocracy or some sort of return to traditional monarchy where you got the king and the church is in power and all that. I think that these people are probably agnostics and they don't really have total faith towards the ideas of Jesus Christ and his existence and all that. And I even believe that a lot of these people are closeted atheists. Now, there are two reasons why I believe that this is the case. The first reason is because I have personal experience with this. I have tried to be Catholic for the right, and for our civilization or whatever, right? I try to go back to church and believe in these things that, deep down I really didn't believe in. And second is just the behavior of e-Catholics and e-Catholic e-celebs, because I've had brush-ins with people like this, and I've also watched their behavior from afar, and the behavior that I keep seeing is an obtuse disregard for the commandments and the teachings of Jesus. And when I say an obtuse disregard, I mean preaching one thing 1 minute and then the next minute doing something completely different. Being terrible to other people, lying about them, humiliating them, doxing them, swatting their families, gossiping and spreading rumors, and just being nasty and dehumanizing and cruel in the face of criticism. This goes far beyond typical human folly that we are to expect among Christian people. And it's not really something that you find with normal Christians who, were raised in the church and just sort of believe these things. And, if you were to, criticize them about the God and the Bible and all that stuff, they would probably just be like really confused and they wouldn't really care. Like they wouldn't really think much about it. But these people are something different. And I'm trying to define what an e-Catholic is. They're certainly younger people, typically, Zoomers, who they're very interested in radical politics, sort of a cynical, Machiavellian, strategic types of political causes, right? Like stuff like NRX. And what's so interesting about this group of people is that they have a very atheistic view of the world. Like they have a very, head in the game, materialistic, Darwinian, kind of view of things, right? Like they're aware of divergent evolution in humans. They're aware of dysgenics. They're aware of stuff like telegony. They view people as sort of irrational actors who believe things for practical purposes, and they see through institutionalized narratives and sort of the group narratives, the group oppression stories that are common throughout the world and throughout history, and of course, where they pertain to traditional religions, right? A typical e-Catholic, they would look at something like Islam, and they would see that as just like a group narrative that's based on nonsense and just sort of ethnic interests, and they would look at that and they would have this very deconstructed and sort of cynical viewpoint. But then they would turn around and they would say, "Oh well, Christ is king, and we got to institute the church, and everything that Jesus said was correct, and blah 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 blah." So it's very very strange, and I even find the same um, suspiciousness among even really nice people that don't transgress the Bible, like Argent and Sirkirk. They're very good people, but again, they have this very like Ryan Falk, this very nihilistic analysis of groups and group narratives and all that stuff. They see the world in these really plain and mechanical cause and effect kinds of terms. But when you get to stuff that's a little bit deeper, right? You get into maybe what causes two atoms to be held together. Then it kind of becomes vague, and you can sort of fill in the blanks, and that's where you sort of get their more spiritual views, right? They when they wonder about the nature of consciousness and existence and all that stuff, all the deeper questions, they settle those through religion, right? And the rest of it, they just they do the scientific way, right? They do or the so-called scientific way, right? They approach all those other subjects from more of an atheistic point of view, right? Where you just sort of, you're looking at, group irrationality, you're looking at mass formation psychosis, and you're asking critical questions, and you're trying to explain different aspects of our world, which, by the way, is not something that normal people typically do. Normal people typically don't ask a whole lot of questions. Normal people aren't that interested in explaining the world. They're not really that curious about it. This isn't to say that Catholics cannot be curious about our world and contribute to science and all that, but they're not really big on deconstructing group narratives and looking at people as these like these clumps of genes that just sort of scramble and run around and interact with each other. They might be interested in discovering some new star or something, right? Trying to maybe explain why the planet Romulus orbits the sun Zeta or something like that, or maybe they'll want to explain some basic strategy about politics, right? Explain some of the basic dynamics, but they're not like right up into the nitty gritty details. They're not really they don't really have their eyes on the genes very much. They don't really have their eyes on just sort of like the contradictions and false promises and just general irrationality that you find among people, right? They don't really want much of that, right? They're not really interested in like all these little ticks that you can manipulate to get people to believe in your version of events, right? They're not really like that. To put it another way, real Catholics are not watchmakers. They're more like watch appreciators. And this is what differentiates the e-Catholic from your typical Catholic, right? Where they're, the typical Catholic is just a watch enjoyer, right? He just sort of enjoys this nice little watch. Whereas the e-Catholic is a watchmaker. He knows how that watch was made. He knows every little gear and every little mechanism that's inside of that watch, and he's very, very interested in all of the little pieces that fit together, right? Now, for me, there are a few reasons why these people are Catholics. First reason is that they believe that religion is something that's very necessary to have in a society, right? If you want to have a healthy society, it has to be a religious one. And this is a view that I've held for a very long time, and I'm still not quite sure about it. I'm honestly still not quite sure whether we should have a religious society or not. Because, you just look at, the average person, the average normie, and you see that the average normie believes in nonsense. So does it really Like, for one thing, does it really matter whether or not they believe in a religion or not? And the other part of that is that it's like, you look at the modern world, and the modern world is very secular, but also the modern world is also very sick. So is religion one of the puzzle pieces that we need to go back to a more healthy society, right? Now, the next reason why I believe that these people are Catholics is because they believe that it's the only way to win politically. They believe that if you want to have a successful nationalist movement, it's got to be rooted in something that is authentic, that is fanatical, that is well connected, that can organize a community, right? And in their eyes, in this perspective, that is traditional religions. So that's the reason. That's the second reason why these people are religious, is that they think that it's the only way to achieve their group interests. Or if not the only way, then it's an effective way. It's a realistic way. And again, I mean, I don't really have that many objections. I mean, it's just it's a fair point. I mean, you look at the history of group struggles. It's often fought between religions, right? And you can even look at the modern secular Bugman cult, and it's basically a different kind of religion. It's a religion without a god, right? It's a religion that has this notion of humanity or whatever, which is, I mean, really not that different from a god. It's just sort of, you're filling in the blanks with all sorts of vivid images, and you're kind of getting high on that imagery, right? And that's sort of your religious feeling, right? Now, the third reason why I think these people are Catholics is because they believe it's the only way that they're ever going to be happy in life. That they can't really be happy in life as atheists, because what is there to atheism? There's nothing. It's just, you're alone in the universe. You're alone in a random scrambling chaos, right? That's pretty much all there is. And when you die, nothing happens, right? So, it's a viewpoint that takes accepting that there is no inherent meaning to anything, right? Becoming an atheist and truly appreciating atheism, it doesn't mean subscribing to this humanity ideal necessarily, but it means coming to terms with the idea that your life is pointless, right? Basically, that there's no point in achieving anything, because everything is temporary, everything is fleeting, and none of it will ever be remembered, right? And I'll just say, like, right out of the gate, this viewpoint is completely wrong, okay? You can be happy, you can live a fulfilling life, you can be empowered by a viewpoint in which there is no meaning to anything. It's just that very few people know how to navigate through an existential crisis properly, and to sort of acclimate themselves to these sorts of unfortunate truths, right? And sort of understanding that life is not just decay and forgetting, but it's also growth and renewing, right? There's not just when people think of nihilism, they imagine a barren wasteland with a steer carcass, right? That's basically how they view the world, right? Or they look at a beautiful woman down the street, and they imagine her deconstructed. It's just sort of a bunch of vibrating organs or something, right? In this very mechanical, kind of creepy way. You're looking at things in this deconstructed way, but it's actually an irrational way of looking at things, because that's just because you deconstruct something does not mean that that's how that thing is put together, right? You can deconstruct a woman and imagine her in this grotesque sort of way, but that's not actually how she's put together. And when you actually put her together, she's beautiful, right? She's actually a beautiful woman, and you can love her and all that stuff. And so there's this kind of bias where people will just focus on all the negative aspects of our reality, and they won't focus on the fact that there are flowers, there are dogs, there's puppies, There's art, there's sailing, there's wine, there is achieving something, right? There is, um, you know, being a good person, right? The fourth reason is kind of a continuation of the third reason, and that's just that when you get rid of religion, like what else are you going to base your life around, right? And so there's sort of this void that atheism leads, where you don't really have anything packed and ready for you that you can base your life around. And the thing is, you have to learn how to do that on your own. You have to learn how to construct your own meaning to life, right? That's it's not something that comes prepackaged with existence, right? You gotta look at the world and want to achieve something, and you sort of strive towards that goal, and you try to make something of yourself. You try to impact people. You try to find love, right? But seeing as that takes a lot of effort to construct a narrative to base one's life around, a lot of people will just pass on atheism. They'll go to some sort of kind of like this in between sort of agnostic appreciation of Christianity, right? You're pretending, kind of pretending to be Catholic, and sort of having an aesthetic, mostly an aesthetic interest in the religion, right? Maybe you'll join the Orthodox Church like I did because you like the iconography or whatever, because you think it's super based in trad or whatever. Now, the fifth reason is just peer pressure. Atheism was ruined in the early 2010s by basically a bunch of Redditors who went around and inserted themselves into every conversation, and they were extremely condescending and nasty and just generally foolish, right? And they were sort of like these hedonistic, not particularly self-aware people who weren't really any better than the people that they're criticizing. They were people that worshipped the United Nations and globalism and multiculturalism and all that nonsense. And you find yourself in the situation where you're on the right wing, and most people are Catholics or religious or whatever, and it's atheism is still, I think, kind of a niche, right? It's still kind of a niche on the right. I think that most atheists are probably liberals, and it's just sort of unpopular to be an atheist because there's just this the stigma around it, and maybe the stigma is deserved to one extent or to the other, but atheism just has a very poor image, okay? And it's there's not a whole lot of substance to atheism. Atheism is just not believing in Yahweh and that God wants you to be circumcised, right? And taking all these points into account, these I think form the basis of the real reasons why people on the right are pretending to be Catholics when they're really more like these autistic atheists, basically. These autistic agnostics, these people who would otherwise not be religious or care very much about the subject. I think that they do it for practical reasons, but I want to make it perfectly clear that a lot of their attempts at trying to be religious, I do believe that they're earnest. I do believe that they really do try, and that they're not just like deceiving their audiences or whatever. But there are, of course, people that do that. That do deceive their audience. They're secretly atheists, and they don't really believe in all that stuff. Now, the reason why I made this video, there's a few reasons. One reason is that I had my own personal experience with this, where I was I was not pretending, but I was really trying to believe in religion again, and sort of incorporate it into my life. And it's just it was this very easy thing that I could do. I mean, it's very socially acceptable. I mean, you got the support of your family, you got the support of all the other right wingers, And it's just a very easy thing to get back into. And another reason is just because these e-Catholics are really annoying, and they just keep they're always like condescending to other people because they don't believe in God or whatever, right? And I think that we should start criticizing those people. I think that those people have had their say for quite a while now, and I also just think that their explanations of the world are just really lackluster, and they promote mediocrity. They promote this view of the world where you don't actually get into the finer details and try to figure out how things work. You kind of just leave things vague in some areas, and you just sort of, brush off, some of the more technical aspects of our society. And I don't like that. I think that if you're going to be a nationalist, you're going to be a political dissident, you should, as Saul Alinsky says, start from the world as it is, not how you would like it to be.